I've got a quick test for you. Tell me the difference between I must finish this report and I have to finish this report. If you're not sure, or if you think they're exactly the same, I want you to stay with me because we're going to clear up some common confusion and mistakes. You see, in English, must, have to, and need to all express some kind of obligation, but they are not always interchangeable. Let me give you an example. Imagine your alarm doesn't go off and now you're rushing to get ready for work. In that moment, you might have several thoughts, including, I must get to work on time. My presentation is first thing. And I have to take a shower. I went to the gym last night. And I need to grab something for breakfast. I'm so hungry. At first glance, these all sound like obligations, and they are. So why did I choose different words for each one? Because each one carries a slightly different meaning. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how English speakers use have to, need to, and must in everyday conversation. So to get started, let's take a step back and understand how these words are similar. Because have to, need to, and must do all relate to obligation, and sometimes they can be used interchangeably. They express that something is necessary or important. But, and this is a really big but, each one has its own nuance. That means that they don't always work in the same way, and in negative sentences, their meanings completely change. So before we dive in, here's a quick question for you. Think about the last time you had something important to do. Was it required by somebody else? Or was it something that you felt was necessary for yourself? I want you to keep this distinction in mind as we get into each verb. In fact, it's a highlight of the 4 ways in which these verbs really vary or differ. We have to look at the source. Where does the obligation come from? And the strength. How strong is the obligation? We also want to consider flexibility. How much choice do you have? And lastly, formality. How formal is this verb? So let's break them down as we go through each verb. We'll start with have to because it's the most common in daily conversation. We use have to when the obligation comes from an external rule or requirement. Think of things like laws, workplace policies, or societal expectations. When it comes to the strength of this verb, it is strong but slightly flexible. There may be consequences that exist if you don't do what you have to do, but they may not be immediate or severe. It also has a little bit more flexibility than must. You might find ways around the rule. And lastly, in terms of formality, it's fairly neutral. It's common in both spoken and written English. So to really understand this word, let's talk about an example scenario. Imagine you've just started a new job at a day spa, and everyone is required to wear a uniform. When talking to your friend about your job, you might say, I have to start my shift at 9 a.m. and wear a uniform to work. Here, have to shows that this is a company policy, an external source of obligation. So think for a moment about your own life. What is something you have to do because of a rule or requirement? Maybe it's something at work, school, or even a law in your country. Now, if you want a few more examples to really understand this, I have several. First, we have to file our income taxes every year. It's a government requirement. Or motorcyclists have to wear helmets when riding their bikes. This is a transportation law. Foreigners have to apply for a visa before traveling abroad. Also a government rule. Once again, think about something that you have to do in your life right now and try sharing it as an example in the comments below. And now let's move on to need to. Unlike have to, which is all about those external rules, need to is personal. It expresses obligations that come from within yourself. We use need to when something is necessary based on your own judgment, priorities, values, or goals. And unlike have to, which again is based on those external rules, need to is about what you personally believe is important. When it comes to its strength, it's softer than have to and softer than must. It's often optional or self imposed. It also has high flexibility because you can usually choose whether or not to act on the obligation. And lastly, like have to, it's neutral. It's very common in spoken English. So, once again, let's take a look at an in depth real life scenario. Imagine that you've made dinner plans with your friends, but now your aunt is not feeling well and you really want to take care of her. So you might tell your friends, I'm so sorry, but I can't make it tonight. I really need to offer my support to my aunt. Here, need to expresses that personal obligation. You feel that this is the right thing to do. No one else is requiring it, but you believe it's necessary. So, once again, take a moment to think about something you need to do this week. Maybe it's for your health, your family, or your personal goals. As always, you can share with me in the comments. Now, before we move on to must, I really want to share a few more examples to make this abundantly clear. So, when it comes to need to, I might say, I need to drink more water. This is a personal health goal. Or, I need to apologize to my friend. Again, a personal judgment. Or, we need to stop at the store before heading home. This is a practical necessity that I might feel. And now, let's move on to the strongest of all three verbs on this list today. We use must when the obligation is absolute and non-negotiable. It often comes from a strong personal opinion, a strict rule or law, or a logical conclusion. And unlike our examples with have to and need to, must sounds more formal. It's typically used in written English, official instructions, and in personal convictions. Now, in a moment, I want to take a look at a real situation to understand how to use must. But I want to share a quick note. We are going to review these three verbs in the negative form, because again, when we go to the negative, the meaning changes entirely. And there's something important to know about must. We do not use it in the past tense. If we're referring to the past using a negative form, we use had to instead. Again, we'll come back to this in a moment, but for now, let's look at an example scenario. Imagine you have an important deadline at work. And with that deadline, you might say, I must finish this project before the weekend. Here, must expresses that strong personal obligation or an obligation that has strong consequences. It's not just important, it's essential. So in terms of the strength of this word, it is the strongest of the three that we're looking at today. It is non-negotiable, and that means that there really isn't flexibility here. This is an absolute requirement. It's also the most formal of all three verbs we're looking at today. So take a moment and tell me if you can think of a time when you said, I must, because it felt 100% necessary. Maybe it was a strong belief or an urgent task. I want you to share it in the comments down below. And of course, just in case you need them, I've got a few more examples for you. Here, let's imagine that you're leaving for a flight in an hour. And you might say, I must leave right now or I'm going to miss my flight. Here, must expresses that urgency and an unavoidable obligation. In fact, if you don't arrive, you are going to miss that flight. There will be a severe consequence. Another example is you must wear your seatbelt. Not only is this a legal rule, there are also pretty significant consequences in terms of your safety. And finally, it must be raining outside. Everything looks wet. This is a logical conclusion. Okay, up until now, we've really focused on have to, need to, and must as a way to express obligation. But what happens when we make them negative? In English, negating these verbs completely changes the meaning, sometimes in ways that might surprise you. So, understanding these differences is crucial to avoiding misunderstandings. Let's start with the strongest of all three, mustn't. This means that something is absolutely prohibited. It is not allowed. For example, on an airplane, you might hear someone say, you mustn't smoke here. It is completely against the rules. Or you mustn't be late to the exam. It's a strict requirement. In fact, if you are late, you might not be able to sit for the exam. You might be disqualified. Next is don't have to. And this means that something is totally optional. It's not required, but it's possible. For example, you don't have to attend the meeting. It's entirely your choice. Or she doesn't have to bring a gift. Again, it's totally not necessary. And finally, don't need to. This also means that something is unnecessary. There's no expectation to do it. For example, you don't need to apologize. It means there's no need for an apology. Or, I don't need to go shopping. We have everything we need at home. You now have everything you need to know about have to for those external obligations, rules, and expectations, along with need to for personal priorities and internal necessities. And finally, must, that strong obligation, in fact, the strongest of them all, for strict rules or situations with severe consequences. If you truly want to master using these verbs correctly, it's important to practice them. So let's do that right now. I've got some questions for you, and I want you to share with me in the comments. What is something you have to do this week? Maybe it's for work, or it's a rule that you must follow. And then, what is something that you need to do for yourself? Maybe it's related to your health, your goals, or personal priorities. And of course, lastly, what is something you must do this week because it's absolutely necessary? Again, post your answers below. Now, if you want to go even deeper on this topic of obligation, I have a recommendation for you. Once you're finished here, I want you to watch my lesson on should, be supposed to, have to, and must. It's the perfect next step to help you express obligation and expectation with even more confidence. As always, you'll find a link to that lesson in the description below. Now, of course, if you found this lesson helpful to you today, I would love to know. And you can tell me in one very simple way. Give this lesson a thumbs up here on YouTube, and while you're at it, make sure you subscribe so you never miss one of my Confident English lessons. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.